Welcome into a very exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is my friend and founder of the company Sarah Does, Sarah Canida. Welcome to the show.
That's me. Hello. I've got two videos going on here. I've got my video over here, live stream from Sarah Does, and then I'm on your video as well over here. So let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah Canida, Sarah Does. You guys know that. We're going to be talking with Bubba Startz with the Scene Project and talk about all kinds of stuff, huh?
Yeah. Well, and I think a good place to start is why, you're going live at the same time on a podcast is that you're a content creator, but not just for you, but for other people. Can you kind of explain what Sarah does?
Oh, God. That one's the hard one here. Okay, what Sarah does is really social media. That's the biggest thing. I am a social media marketer. I go to businesses, I promote businesses on social media. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, a little bit on YouTube, a little bit on Snapchat, things like that, but mostly Facebook in this area. And I also content create for businesses, events, people. I edit, I host, I party plan, I influence, go to businesses and, oh, Sarah Does is coming, and just do all kinds of stuff like that.
And a relatively new business. Obviously, nobody was doing this 10 years ago, but you weren't even doing this a year ago. So where was kind of the inspiration for kind of going out on your own a little bit and starting to, venture into entrepreneurship and content creation?
I think everything has just led me to this in the past. Everything from working for the police department in Deadwood to then working for him, managing that. I managed their social media. I drove up the sales, drove up their social media, and then from there, area chamber of commerce, and went into marketing and sales again, and drove up tips by the following of people on social media. Then went to Milet Marketing, and went in and kind of decided, hey, I don't do this and I don't do that, but I do something completely different than what Milet Marketing was doing. So we all kind of collaborated together and said, let's just do kind of this influencing content creation, social media specialist. And then did that for a while and decided, why not just be my own boss and go on my own? So that's where I'm at now. And everything seems to be going very well. And I just want to make sure I got to look over here and see who's following us. And yes, I'm on a podcast with Bubba Startz here, so we got to kind of go back and forth. All right.
Well, and your audio is a lot better when you stay right there. When
Right
you
here?
drift,
Okay.
the microphone starts losing you a little bit. So.
Okay.
So that's great. I mean, you're out here on your own. It's very courageous of you to leave that guaranteed paycheck and kind of working for someone else to go out on your own. It's a reason that I've worked with you over the course of the last 6 months, and that I've reached out to you is because I see that. I know that struggle very well, Sarah. I appreciate that, but there's definitely struggles that come to that too. And I know that mental health is something that's very important to you. Why not start from your own mental health, and just how you cope with the everyday stress of, not just being a business owner, but of also being, a mother of several rambunctious children as well.
Well, that's what I'm working on. So that one is still a difficult trying to find balance of how do you do everything that your mind wants you to do. My mind is always just like, do this, creativity, always thinking of something new to do. And I want to volunteer. I want to work. I want to be a mom. I want to have dogs. I want to have a boyfriend, all that stuff. But it's hard to do it all. So when you're putting yourself out there with everything, you start struggling with your own self-care, mental health, all that stuff. And that's something that I constantly struggle with, especially with social media. Social media, people don't maybe they do realize it's a hard one to put yourself out there, be on videos. If you're having a bad day, and all of a sudden you got to go to a business and get on a Facebook live stream and you cried all day. Okay. Your eyes are all swollen. You're sad, but you have to look like, hey, you're good. Everything's in my life. That's very difficult for me. And so I'm struggling with that right now of just how do I show up to the world, get out of my car. My car's got stickers. all over my face on it, and it looks really pretty, in that picture. And then some days I don't want to do my hair. I want to be in pajamas. I want to have sunglasses on, and I pop out of that car, and people are looking at my picture, and they're looking at me, and they're like, "That's not the same person." So that's what's going on my mind all the time. But maybe it's not what people think. Maybe it's just in my own mind. I don't know.
And I think 85% of what we think other people are thinking is BS because everyone's so busy thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
They're not paying attention to you at all. And I think that, any
They better be paying
inadequacies,
attention a little bit.
well, maybe 15 seconds at a time or so.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what brought me to you is that I faced those same struggles, Sarah. And it forced me into kind of abandoning the social media. I mean, it sounds silly because you see me posting all the time, but I'm not making posts anymore. I've taken my content kind of into my own website and into delivering a long form writing. And writing's been a great release for me to just get it all out there and to let those kind of things breathe. And granted, sometimes, the content that I want to share isn't necessarily what I would want to hear, right? Or that I would want to read. But I think that when we share our stories, like that's for someone else, maybe more than for ourselves.
Well, that's what I want to do. It's just been a struggle of in my mind thinking that I have to perform a certain way, put on a mask, put on a mask and be this in my mind beautiful. Your hair's got to be done, makeup's got to be perfect, clothes got to look great, smile on your face, and everything's got to be great to go out to the world to do this stuff. But it's just not that way. Life is not like that. And so I'm trying to figure out how to bring that into my work right now of showing that I struggle with my own stuff. I mean, I even brought this over here because we were going to talk mental health. I take lorazepam every single day. It's a benzodiazepine, and to help with my social anxiety because I have major social anxiety, and people don't know that about me unless you're close to me. So to get myself to do those things, sometimes pop one of those, make it out there, do that. Sometimes have a glass of wine, champagne, whatever, or I don't know, just trying to figure out what some days are harder than others.
No doubt. I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman today. Earlier this year, he performed to a sold out U.S. Bank Stadium. And for 30 years before that, he was a roadie for, guys that were doing that. And we talked about, the struggle of having to perform and everyone, all that weight being on your shoulders continually, night after night, that you don't think about these big, the rock stars, and you get to wake up at noon and you don't think about all the work that's gone into that, the work that's going into that show. And then to do that night after night after night, right? We see the one show and we're like, that was awesome. And we go home and go on with our lives. Meanwhile, that whole crew is going to do that all again and to go put themselves out there completely. And to do that, that's how we all show up for our own lives. Like, and there's no show and there's no, there's no crowd waiting to adore you. If you're lucky, you have a dog or a cat that loves you or kids that, still love you.
Yep.
Like, it's the same struggle. It's the same struggle that we're all dealing with to wake up every day. So I think it's very brave of you to not only put out the TV news anchor smile and to dress up and doll up and to do that, but to also let people see your vulnerable side and to let you, especially in your local community. I mean, you talked about your time on the force. You've always been someone who's been looked to as a figure. What that figure was has changed over the years, but you've always been looked up to in our town, and it's a lot to live up to.
It is. Well, that's where I keep coming to is if I'm not volunteering enough, if I'm not being the best mom that I can be, if I'm not, um, you know, looking the best that I can look, just all of those things. Even when I got a divorce, that was a huge struggle for me because in my mind, And I might cry on this today now. In my mind, I felt like I had to be this perfection at all times, the perfect mom to five kids, the perfect, animal mommy, the volunteer, all of that stuff. And then all of a sudden, one day, you have to announce to the world, I'm getting a divorce. And a lot of people didn't, they thought everything was good and everything was great because that's the persona that I put out there. And that was hard. And I struggled with that for many years. And now it's, geez, 7 years later. And now it's another new struggle of just trying to be the best mom you can be. I don't know, or having a boyfriend and trying to be the best girlfriend you can be. Because all these people in this small town, they know what's going on somewhat in your life and what you're doing and where you're at and where your car's at and all, just everything.
And
So
in social media in some ways has made every town a small town. Like
yeah,
now all of a sudden everyone is living the life that we've always led just because where we were raised or where we choose to raise our children. But yeah, social media kind of, so I don't think your struggle is, I don't think it's as rare as you think it is. Right. I think everybody out there, and we know them. We know the people around us that have gone through all of these things, and you don't have to put that face on, Sarah. It's okay to not be okay. Right. It is okay to fall apart sometimes and
yeah.
to take some time for yourself. And I think taking time can look so many different ways in this world. We work out incessantly. We work out 7 days a week, 6 days a week. We're walking, we're moving, we're in the gym 3-4 times a week. Like that's our me time. And it took me maybe until right now to realize that even about myself is that like, oh no, I'm not just there supporting my wife. I need this, right? Like
Yeah.
I need that motion in my body. Otherwise, I'm not the best version of myself. So, yeah, I think and finding that sometimes takes decades.
Well, I think that's where I have been not my top self lately is because I'm a yoga instructor and I haven't been teaching yoga just because in this area lead you might get 0 to 3 people and it's just difficult. So, I'm not teaching yoga. I'm not doing as much yoga as I wanted to. I'm not swimming like I like to do. The sauna. I had an episode at the sauna where the ambulance had to come for the second time, and I love saunas. So now I'm not even in the sauna. Spiritually, I love to be involved with, oh, all different types tarot, oracle cards, Reiki, hypnosis, all these different things. And I'm not using those as much as I can possibly too. So everything kind of starts to struggle. I'm just seeing who's over here. Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Well,
Um,
and especially, this time of year with the holidays for a mom, yeah, it's a common struggle. There isn't enough time to do every single thing. And unfortunately, it's always the self-care that kind of takes the back seat when it should be the driver.
yeah. Yep. And then the self-care, I have been trying to work on that because I did hit a little bit of a burnout. And I don't know if everybody knows about the social media burnout, but I'm doing so much social media and staring at it every day because that's my job. That's what I want to do. But you kind of just get burnt out with it. And so I am working on massages. I have a massage tomorrow. I did Reiki last week. I did hypnosis last week. I have just throwing in a little bits here and there that I can do to work on myself, and it helps a ton. The holidays right now are always hard with family stuff, even though I have a very big family with my children. It's difficult. We talked about this before. We both have our family struggles, and I think my family a little bit, right?
Enough to know the story, right?
Yeah. Just the holidays are very difficult, and that's why I left for Thanksgiving, is because okay, we're gonna get this out. Breathing. My dad died in January, and he wasn't in my life very much for a couple years before that, anyways. And that's only one of my. I have a real dad, and then I have two stepdads, and one of my stepdads is my real dad because he adopted me. Then I have a mother who lives here in town in Lead, who I do not speak to very much. And then I have a sister that lives close by that I do not speak to at all right now. And that's my family. And it's very difficult because they're here, my mom and my sister, but we can't even have a holiday together. So I took off to Thermopolis, Wyoming, and sat in the amazing mineral springs just to get away from that and not have to invite anybody and not have to even think about it, just to go off by myself. And yeah, so holidays are difficult.
Do you feel like you've grieved your dad?
Um, I feel like I have here and there. It comes and it goes. Like I had grieved my dad for a few years before he died
Because
because
he
he
was
was
sick for a fairly long time, if I'm
yeah,
correct in remembering.
he had alcoholism issue and he married a woman a few years ago and she did not want him in our lives, his daughter's lives. So he chose not to be in our lives and it was very hard because he had always been in my life. And like I said, this is just the dad that adopted me, but he's my dad to me. And so for a few years before he passed away, I actually grieved his death then. And I said, he's dead to me. And it's sad to say that. And that's to say that out loud. It's really sad. But that's how I felt is if he's not going to be in my life, he's not going to be in my children's life, and he's going to die at some point from the alcoholism. Just grieve it now. And then about 6 months before he died, or maybe even about 4 months before he died, he called me and he left a message on my phone, and I still have it on my phone. And he was crying and he said, I'm really sorry for everything. And him and his wife had split up. So he was living alone and he wanted me back in his life. So I got to see him for Thanksgiving. I traveled across the state to go see him. And then I'm just trying to think, he came out here for a day and it would only meet me at the Saloon 10. And I went and met him there. And then when he passed, I was the one that dealt with it all from the night before, talking to him on the phone, trying to get him to go to the hospital, to that morning, talking to him, trying to get him to go to the hospital. He wouldn't go. And then he died. So everybody's calling me, the coroner, the funeral home, all these people while I'm flying across the state. Sorry, I'm rambling now, but I'm flying across the state to Madison and trying to deal with all of this stuff. And I don't even know how I made it there safely because it was one of the hardest things I've ever dealt with. I've never had to deal with all of that on my own by myself, but I did it, got there. And then a lot of bad stuff happened while I was there for his funeral. We got kicked out of his house. I got kicked out of his house by his wife. And it was his house, his bachelor pad, and it just wasn't fun. We'll just say that. So then, since January, it's hard because he left all of his stuff, his money, his this, his that, to the wife, which is okay. But even, everything that he owned, I'm talking like a Green Bay Packers shirt that he cared about or a plane that he collected, something like that. It's all just gone, every single thing. And I have a teddy bear that we got him when I was little, and I have his Green Bay Packers coat, and that's it. And that's okay. I don't need anything else. But it's just like he just disappeared. And then his social media, she had blocked everything on there and got rid of his Facebook. So it's just like he's gone. But gone. And you can't even fully grieve it. So that's kind of where I'm at, is like thinking some days that, well, I knew he was going to pass away. I knew he was going to die. Is just like angry, sad. I dream about him almost every single night. I dreamt about him last night. Some days he's really healthy and other days he's very unhealthy. And so I don't know. I don't know how to get over that.
Oh, well, it's going to take longer than a year. I mean,
Mhm.
it wasn't that long ago to start with. I think that's the first thing our little human brains really struggle with is that a year is not a long time.
Yeah.
Like we make it into a long time, but it's just not. And especially with cuts that deep with so many. I mean, you're not talking about one cut. You're talking about that knife has been stabbed into your heart over and over again. You didn't just lose, like you've lost your dad 6 or 7 times over. And then you have no heirlooms, the important ones. Yes, you have a few things, but you don't have the important ones. I know how important that jacket was to you, and little things like that they're they're important. Like it's having, and that's, I think, something that especially American culture doesn't have a lot of. That's I love the Mexican culture for this, because Dia de los Muertos is more than just like a day of the dead and parades and all of these things. It's about honoring your ancestors. All the pictures of your dead relatives and their favorite foods are laid out on the platters, and it's such a beautiful remembrance of, like, they're not gone. They are always with you. And maybe that's what Dad's trying to tell you, is that, like, hey, you dumb, I'm not gone. I'm right here. And in fact, I'm more here than maybe I've ever been able to be, between the alcohol and the distance and all of these things. But that Dad is actually, that energy and that aura hasn't left you, right? That love hasn't left you. I'm so glad that you got to have that conversation with him before he passed away and got to reconnect, because how much worse would all of this be then?
Well, that is the thing is it I remember I was acting at the opera house. I was in a play, and like I said, I'd come to terms in my mind that he already died. I wasn't even going to attend his funeral, which is really hard for me because I'm a very nice person. Like, to not attend your dad's funeral, but I'd made up my mind already. And I remember getting off stage and I had a missed call, and it says from Dad, which was a big deal. And I listened to it, and still, it's so hard to listen to. I listened to it last week again, and I just cried like all day long. You can barely hear what he's saying because of his alcoholism. And he was so weak and so tired, but he's just crying and saying he's so sorry and he's so sorry. And he made mistakes with his own mental health and chose to drink a lot, and he was very unhappy, but he reached out to me in the end and needed me. And this goes back to my childhood. My dad was always there for me when I needed him. So even though he wasn't the best dad that came into my life at 4 years old, he still was my dad too. And he was, anytime that something bad happened, my growing up, because there was a lot of bad stuff that happened, I would call him, say 9, 10 years old, because we moved to North Carolina at one point. My mom moved me and my sister to North Carolina and married another man. And while we were there was a lot of fighting between my mom and my sister, a lot of bad things that I saw. And I would call my dad and say, Dad, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And he'd fly out instantly. He'd book that flight, fly out, come fix everything, bring us back here, get my mom into treatment, rehab, all kinds of stuff. And so he was like a savior to me. So at the end, I finally got to try to be his savior and help him, even though I didn't want to take it. But I did get to help him. I got to pick all of his songs for his funeral. And even the funeral man said, he goes, I've never heard 80s songs, Caribbean Queen, The Promise, if you know that song, all these 80s Bee Gees, Staying Alive. I picked all these songs because they were his favorite songs, and I knew he would have loved that. And
Staying
so I
alive
did
at a
get to be
funeral, only you, Sarah.
I know that was the last song, but that was the song that he always wanted. Those were his favorite songs. And so I got to kind of be his savior in the end. And so I'm still working on that, but it also brings it back to then the family that I do have alive here. So then how do you be there for the family that you still have that you can't fully be around because of so much traumatic stuff? I don't know. What's the answer to that?
Yeah, and there's no amount of healing on your own that you can do that heals the relationship. Like, it's got to be two ways. And this is where I have a lot of experience, is that you know, my dad, when I was 13 years old, decided that, not just, starting a relationship with another woman, that it was going to be somebody else's wife. And then it was also going to be, well, they're going to kind of live with us while your mom and I are still together. And, like, then we're going to tell all you that it's not as fucked up as it is. and then you're 25 years later than that, and these people get to have a relationship with your kids now, and they want this perfect relationship with your kids, and they fucked up your whole fucking life, you know?
Yeah.
Like I struggle with it all the time, and I've recently had to cut my, like, you don't get all the good feelings from my kids anymore when you're going to, yeah, and when we've not even healed our shit. You know what I mean? Like, you don't, no, no,
Yeah.
you just, I can't do it. I can't for myself do it and then properly raise my children and do all these things, and I can't do that to myself. I can't let you hurt me again. I'm not going to let you hurt me again.
That's exactly where I'm at. Is I had five children for a reason. I wanted to have that many children, to have my own family, to be the family that
You
I
didn't
feel like
have.
I didn't have. Yeah. And um to have my family, my mom and my sister come into my life and say, send me a text. Hey, I want you back in my life, or everything's going to be better, all this stuff. I've been hurt so many times since I was a child and seen so many things with my mother and my sister that I'm so terrified to allow one of them in my front door, because if it hurts me, I go down the mental health path of triggering my PTSD, all of my stuff that then brings me to drinking too much, that then brings me to crying all day, to where I can't perform out in the world again. And then I can't be the best mom I want to be.
Exactly. Well, and all of that other stuff is affecting your kids too,
Yeah.
right? Like all of that. And it wasn't really until we kind of severed, and it's been fairly recently, but it was just a simple conversation and a simple, my dad kind of came after me just this summer. And there was just the things that he said, and the way there was is that, like, you haven't changed a fucking bit. You are still the same man that you were 25 years ago that hurt me then. And you've never made amends to that. So why would I let you get all of this serotonin and all this dopamine from being with my kids and getting to be grandpa when you couldn't even be a decent father and are still choosing to not be a decent father? So I don't need to put myself through this to give you those good feelings. My kids know they have a grandfather. You can send a card. They'll get all the good feelings from knowing you're out there. And that's good enough for me, because I'm not letting you back in. I'm not doing it because I need to be better for my kids. Because when I let you back in, I become a mess and I
Yeah.
torture myself, and I'm not going to do that anymore.
Well, that's why it's good to talk about this with you today, because stuff that exactly what you're saying is exactly the stuff that I've been struggling with, of just people don't realize what it does to you. You're doing the best you can. And I'm talking about me. We're doing the best that we can to get our work going. Our family's taking off. You've got a wife. I've got a boyfriend. We're trying to just be the best that we can for all this stuff. And then one little thing can trigger stuff from the past, from your parents, from your siblings, whatever. And recently, my mom, she did reach out. She said, we hadn't talked in, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And she sent me a reel, like a reel from social media that was a really sweet one about your daughter and blah, blah, blah. And then she said, I really need to talk to you. And so, of course, I knew this is going to be big. She's going to want to maybe apologize. I don't know. So I went and met with her in the park, and I hadn't seen her in so long. She's aged, so that was hard for me to see that. And then also, she had about 5 pages that she read to me, and I was wearing sunglasses so that I could just deal with myself crying and listening. And I listened to everything that she said and her apologies for all of these different things throughout my whole life. And in the end, I just looked at her and I said, thank you. I don't really know what else to say. And she handed me a list of all of her, what the doctors said that she has, like depression and this and that and this, which then I looked at it and I said, I know, Mom. I've lived with you, my whole life. I know you have all this stuff. But that to me is like an excuse of, like, again, hey, here's my prescription, the doctor's sick note saying this is what I have. So now you can understand and we can be in each other's lives again. And to me, I'm like, no, that's not going to fix everything. I mean, I have my own stuff. My sister has her own stuff. We're all struggling with mental health stuff, but that's not going to fix everything. So I walked away and said thank you, and I appreciate it. And I got in my car, and then she handed me a card. And in the card, as I drove away, I opened it up and it talked about this village. It takes a village to raise a child. And at the very end, she wrote, I didn't have a village. And that one was really sad for me. But she did. Like, I can look back and see that she had a lot of people that helped her through different times. And
You
maybe
had an
she didn't.
ex-husband that loved your fucking daughters enough to show up and pull them out of a bad situation. Say you
Yeah.
didn't need a
Like,
village, you needed one man.
yes.
That was your
Yeah,
dad.
there were so many different things that my mom had, and maybe she didn't see it. That's where her mental health, where she struggles.
Right.
But I can't just allow this right back into my life. Then she does this, and she doesn't reach out afterwards at all. So this is a couple months ago. She doesn't reach out again and say, "Hey, I just wanted to say I'd like to get together again. Would you like to go out and have a cup of coffee?" She never reaches out again. So again, she just shows to me she's not going to be there again. She's not going to be around. And then Thanksgiving comes and I take off out of town and I hear she's invited to my ex's house with his girlfriend. And she writes on social media, "Oh, I'm so happy that, the ex-husband of Sarah's girlfriend invited me over for Thanksgiving, and I haven't been invited anywhere in years, but oh, thank you so much." And I'm like, again, that's just another stab at me. And I don't know, it's just everything. It's not what I
She attacked your motherhood, your daughterhood. You're like,
yeah.
and that's why it makes the apology and the 5 pages seem really freaking insincere, doesn't it?
Yeah, so and I don't usually talk about this stuff, just so everybody knows. I don't usually put this on my Facebook. I don't talk about all those things, but those are the things that I struggle with and try to come to terms with, is those are triggering things for me. And I have to take care of myself to get through being a mom, first of all. That's the number one thing. Second of all, doing a business, just trying to show up for the world. And all of those things are very, very triggering for me. So
My biggest blessing has been moving away from the Black Hills, to be perfectly honest. To not be there. I know that's not really an option for you, right? Not everybody can run away from it. But for me, just not being face to face with it made it so much easier. And we have a nice little life here, but we have a village, right? Like, we didn't just move into the middle of nowhere. I had my wife's family and everyone to come land here, and we're very happy here. And nobody here causes any drama, and nobody here makes me freaking cry, and nobody, like, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with living my life now at 38, like, no, I'm good feeling like dog crap because somebody else wants to treat me a certain way. I'm just not going to allow you to treat me that way. And if that means you're not a part of my life, I'm okay with that. Perfectly okay with that. Thanks for listening. Remember to follow the Scene Projects on all your social media channels and get even more content at thesceneprojects.com.